Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Environment, Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting on today, 16th of November 2022. Just to say, on the top table today, we have our Executive Director, Barbara Renton, the Vice Convener, Bailey Mike Williamson, and Adam Taylor from Committee Services. And I will now ask Adam to confirm any apologies and substitutions and take the roll call. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. We've had apologies this afternoon from Councillor Colin Stewart, who has been substituted by Councillor Cuthbert. Just to confirm, the councillors we've got present in the room with us, I'll just run through the list and then I'll ask those online just to confirm whether they're present or not. So we've got Councillor Allen, Councillor Carr, Councillor Duff, Councillor Kogali, Bailey McLaren, yourself, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Smith, Councillor Cuthbert, Councillor Waters and Bailey Williamson. If I can just ask those online to confirm whether they're present. Bailey.
Present, good afternoon.
Councillor Forbes.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Councillor Harvey.
Present.
And finally, Councillor Welsh.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. That's everybody present, Convener.
Thank you, Arch. Before we move on to consider the main items of business on the agenda this afternoon, members of the previous Environment and Infrastructure Committee will be aware that in previous years, the Council has made a commitment to offer free parking to support businesses across Perth and Kinross in the lead up to Christmas. Recently, however, some elected members have expressed concern about encouraging car use as a result of this approach, particularly in light of the climate emergency. Certainly, the SNP Group and others had sought to provide an alternative approach which would retain the benefits of the free parking scheme. As such, as a result of working with local bus companies, I'm delighted to be able to announce that the Council are to offer free bus travel on all local bus services in Perth and Kinross for journeys undertaken within the local authority area on Saturdays the 10th, 17th and 24th of December. Passengers who have a free under 22, 60 plus or disabled concessionary bus pass will be expected to use their bus pass on these days, with those who usually would have to pay a fare travelling for free. In addition, as a result of funding from Smarter Choices, Smarter Places, this comes at no cost to the Council. And while this falls under the delegated authority of the Executive Director, economic development is part of this committee's remit. And as such, I thought it was important to formally announce this great offer at committee this afternoon. By enabling passengers to travel for free during the 3 Saturdays leading up to Christmas, this provides support with the cost of living crises and also boosts footfall for local businesses. It should also encourage many people to leave their car at home and travel free on the bus, which benefits the environment. I'm sure that you will join me in thanking officers, the bus companies and Smarter Choices, Smarter Places in delivering this in these challenging financial times, and I'm happy to take questions or comments just now on this matter. First of all, I have Bailey.
Thank you, Convener. You actually responded to what I was going to put as a question, so if I may, I'll make a brief comment. This is obviously fantastic news, something I've been pushing for 4 or 5 years now. I always doubted the extent to which the previous offer would actually help businesses. I think businesses will be far better off with a turnover of people, fresh people coming into the town and spending fresh money. And this is also very good news for the environment and for public transport users in general. We're incentivising public transport. So thank you for this. Thank you to the Executive Director and thank you to your administration as well. Very, very good move. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Bailey McLaren.
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, this I view as a wonderful initiative and a great incentive for all within Perth and Kinross to be able to travel into the centre of Perth and partake of all atmosphere that may be happening at that time of year within the city. So I commend the organisation that's gone behind to bring this to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Yeah, it's just really to add to the comments that have already been made and to ask for clarity. Does this also include evenings so that the restaurants and pubs can take benefit as well?
Yes, certainly it is. All the bus operators, to my knowledge, throughout Perth and Kinross for all of those days mentioned, including into the evening as well. But yeah, as the executive directors just remind me, that's the local buses in Perth and Kinross. It's not applicable on the longer range coach services for journeys within Perth and Kinross.
So for clarity in what's contained in the press release, which has just gone out, is that it excludes CityLink, Ember, Fix, Parks of Hamilton, Megabus and Fisher's Tours. But all the local bus networks are part of this.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I just was wondering about the availability of buses and bus drivers. You and I have talked about this before, and there is a real shortage of buses and drivers at the moment. So my concern is that somebody gets themselves into Perth, there's a pile of shopping, and then can't get home again. Have you had any discussions with Stagecoach or other operators about this?
Thanks for that. I share your concerns about the bus services at the moment. This is a direction we want to move in, and we've had assurances that the bus companies will do their utmost to run the best service possible that they can on these particular Saturdays. But beyond that, we're unable to go. Thanks.
And unfortunately, Councillor Forbes, there's no one here from the public transport unit who've got a little bit more detail, but we will provide that because, as Councillor Harrott has just said, then we've been in long discussions with the bus companies to ensure that they can support us in delivering this offer.
Thanks, Barbara. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. Like the previous comments, I fully welcome this. This is a direction of travel we need to be heading in. With a lot of our carbon footprint for Perth and Kinross being on transport, it's great to see this kind of initiative to encourage people to use local buses. Just to say, one of the things I'm exceptionally pleased about with this, it would have been very easy just to do Perth City with this, but actually to provide the free bus transport over the whole of Perth and Kinross allows people in more the settlements that are more out with the city to benefit in this scheme as well.
Thank you for that. And Councillor John Duff.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean, I welcome the statement you've made, and it'll be interesting to see the take up. I just wondered, are the companies going to be able to provide us with some feedback at the end of this with how the take up has been? Thank you.
I have not personally discussed the matter of feedback, but I'm sure that we will be looking for feedback to examine, if you like, what sort of cost-benefit analysis there is. It's something we want to do, but Barbara, I think, wants to add some more comment.
So thank you, Councillor Parrott. Councillor Duff, Stagecoach will be able to provide us with information for passenger figures on the previous Saturday, and and how that compares against the 3 Saturdays that will be part of the offer that we're presenting today. What we won't know is whether people are using that to go shopping or to go to the pubs and restaurants, or whether they're just using it to come into town or to go to Blairgowrie or whatever, to visit friends, relatives or whatever. So we will do our very best. It's been a perennial question that has been asked in relation to how we evaluate anything, including the free festive parking as well. But we'll also do an analysis round about how busy the car parks are as well.
Thank you. I see no more questions on this, so we will move on and to the formal business. And first I'll ask, are there any declarations of interest in respect of the business today? Councillor Duff.
Just declare an interest in the private paper due to my membership of the Outdoor Access Forum. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September. Can we agree that minute? Agreed, thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Moving on to item 4, the outstanding business statement. Do members have any questions relating to the outstanding business statement? I see none being indicated, so we'll accept the outstanding business statement and move on. We move on now to item 5, which is the Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan Scheme, and I would ask Brenda Murray to introduce this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Parrott. The report being considered today fulfils the Council's statutory duty to prepare and annually update the development plan scheme for the Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan. The current Local Development Plan, LDP2, was adopted by the Council in 2019, and that sets out the spatial strategy to guide land use and development up to 2029. The 2006 Planning Act requires the plan to be reviewed at intervals of no more than 5 years, and in working towards this timescale, preparation of the next Local Development Plan, LDP3, commenced in 2021. The development plan scheme set out at Appendix 1 contains the programme and progress towards LDP3, including, importantly, our approach to public participation. LDP3 will be a new style local development plan as set out in the Planning Scotland Act 2019, and will have a far greater emphasis on community engagement and collaboration, so very much in line with the intent of the Perth and Kinross offer and the draft community plan. The committee is invited to agree to the proposed development plan scheme and to request an annual progress report detailing any changes to the scheme. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. The first question is Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. My first question, I've got 2 questions actually. In fact, the first one's quite brief. In the current LDP2, we have seen in various communities that with the growth in housing, the actual services that are meant to go along with these houses haven't arrived. For example, and I'll be parochial, in Kinross, we've got loads of houses, but it's now almost impossible to get a doctor's appointment, or it'll take a year to get a dentist's appointment, and even schools and that are getting near capacity. So a plan should be done in such a way as all these things tie up so that we don't get out of kilter with things. How's the new LDP3 going to differ from what happened in LDP2? And I've got one more question after that, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. We'll take your second question later if we may. Your comments, I think, are very good and the sort of things that need to be made during the consultation, but I'll ask Brenda if she'd reply to your questions. Thank you.
In terms of the new development plan system, it will be prepared under the framework of National Planning Framework 4. In terms of how that is coming forward, we requested in our response on the draft of the National Planning Framework that the government look at trying to join up and align those responsible for delivering much of the infrastructure and services and facilities to support new developments, so to try and join up these strategies, and that, you know, will be addressed coming through the delivery programme, which will support the National Planning Framework, and we will be operating within that. At the local level and for LDP3, we're currently in the process of gathering evidence, and that, you know, is focusing on looking at what available services there are, infrastructure, health, etc., across the full remit, education capacity, trying to gather evidence so that we can then prepare our development plan to accord with where capacity is available, and also to locate new development in such a way that you know, it provides you know, for better use of that infrastructure and provision of new infrastructure in such a way as to be more cost effective and joined up. So we're currently you know, undertaking a lot of that research at the moment. I think it,
Go on, Brenda.
what I was going to say is we're obviously not responsible for, you know, the provision of you know, the full remit of services and infrastructure that are required. You know, through the plan policies, we look to try and ensure that developers bring that forward with their developments. And I suppose the hope is that the new development plan system and framework under NPF4 helps you know, pull that all together and, you know, give greater control to be able to best plan for those services.
Thank you. Is it related to your first? No, okay. Can I come back to you for a second question after others have had their first, Councillor Robertson? Write it down, Councillor Robertson. But for now we'll move on to Councillor Watt as well. Councillor Robertson writes down his second question.
Thank you, convener. The national planning framework, which is just one of the revisions has been published, states that significant weight is to be given to the global climate and nature crisis, including the support of retrofit measures to allow adaptation to climate change and biodiversity loss, and to promote nature recovery. And at this stage, I'm going to get quite parochial as well with and ask about, from a consultation perspective, over Loch Leven. We see a lot of concern from numerous groups and the community quite widely. And I know in LDP2 we do have specific policies over the Loch Leven catchment to try and mitigate the damage and effect on the loch. But as part of the new National Planning Framework 4, it goes and this at the stage we're at, it goes a little bit further. And it was just to ask how during the consultation are we able to engage with specific issues like that. And especially, I noticed that in the papers it sort of chats about communities of interest. Does that come into that criteria, where you can actually look at specific issues like Loch Leven and the over-nutrification of the loch through phosphates, and actually put firm policies or enhance the policies considerably to actually backtrack on and not just mitigate, but actually to help repair and restore.
Thank you. Brenda?
When we're carrying out our engagement on the plan, we will be doing it on a locality basis, and there will be opportunities for people to, raise issues that are of interest to them. I think in terms of specific detailed policy, it'll be further down the line, as we get to the proposed plan stage, that we will, be developing those, and there will be, opportunities for engagement around that. So I think at this kind of early stage in the process, we're looking to find out what the key issues are in the local area, and to develop that as we go through the process. So possible specific discussions around certain policy areas that are of interest to local communities will be able to take place as we move forward through the process. And I know yourself, Councillor Waters, and the other Kinross Shire members have been heavily involved in where we're at with Lochleven, and we do have an officer group working with yourselves on that. So we know it will be a key area of interest for the local community.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move now to Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Convener. I note in the paper it talks about the regulations and guidance which is due to be published round about now, which we haven't yet seen, I don't believe, at least certainly I haven't seen it yet. My question was around about some issues which come to the planning committee are stemming around the conservation areas, and the fact that our conservation area assessments, I think, are probably in need of being redone. And I just wondered if there's any commitment to do this ahead of LDP3 or as part of the LDP3 process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. We have had internal discussions around taking that work forward, and we will be looking to start that. Don't have a specific timescale for that, but the intentions are that that is in advance of LDP3. It's just very much a case of workload and fitting that into, along with the significant work that we have underway. So it's certainly on the radar.
Thank you. And I think Barbara Renton wants to come in here now as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parrott. Councillor Duff, this is a question that, sort of the Head of Economic Development and I have on a fairly regular basis. Clearly, sort of the pressures within the team, and equally the issues that we've had of a number of the planning staff leaving over the course of the last year and a bit, for very good reasons. But resources are tight. But it will become a prioritisation element, and when we can do the conservation areas that we need to do, we will be doing them, subject to resources being available.
Thank you. Just I was aware or made aware that some issues to do with the conservation policies, if you like, are coming through to LRB to be resolved, whereas if we had them done, perhaps that would stop some of that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we now move to Bailey McLaren. Thank you.
Thank you. This is maybe more of a comment, so I do apologise. I would just like to see an encouragement to allow more consideration given to social and recreational space within larger developments. Again, to get a bit parochial, I'm experiencing within Bertha Park, which sits within my ward, a lovely new expanding community, but there's a poor provision for recreational space, green space, indoor community space. And we've got community frustrations that are really arising from that, a clash between pupils at break time not being able to access a green space and spilling into the play area within the only green space within the area, which is the play area of the housing. So just a bit more consideration to creation of spaces within larger housing developments going forward, I could see would benefit the communities. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, I've previously raised a concern I had in that active travel space seemed to be simply included with leisure and recreational space, and I would certainly like to see specific provision for active travel space. But I'll pass over to Brenda for a fuller answer. Thank you.
In terms of the development plan, LDP3, and moving forward, One of the new requirements is to have in place an open space strategy and also a place efficiency assessment. The place efficiency assessment comes quite early on in the process, so as part of the first stage, which is preparation of our evidence report. So that, will look at, existing play, and we will, through that and the open space strategy, be looking to ensure that provision is brought forward through new developments. Active travel wise, we are working on a mobility strategy as well as a local development plan. So there's quite a lot of work going on in that regard. There would be, linkages across the two. So we are looking at them in their own right, if you like, in addition to what we would class as open space and recreational areas.
Thank you. And we now move online to Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener. Actually, Councillor Duff jumped in ahead of me there with exactly the same question I was going to ask, so I'll just pass on to the next person, but thank you very much. Thank
you very much. So we now move on to Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. Under the proposals at 5.5, it finishes off with a statement: the consultation outlined supports the Perth and Kinross offer and draft community plan, and in doing so assists communities wishing to prepare their own local place plans. My question really is, are the resources available and in place to help local communities prepare these local place plans? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Resources are always constrained, but I'll pass to Brenda for the answer. Thank you.
I would say there are limited resources. There has been a lot of work done to date in terms of community action plans, which in a way are similar to local place plans, whilst they have a wider focus than land and buildings. There's a lot contained within them which are relevant to local place plans. So I think, in some ways, local communities will have pretty much a local place plan through that community action plan. There won't be much work to do to that to make it a local place plan, if you like. The terminologies are all a bit confusing and a bit overlapping. What we would like to do is, offer assistance where we can. In terms of my team, development plan team, it would be around some of the, the local knowledge, the development plan policy, where we're at, how opportunities could potentially be taken forward. We also have our a funding officer who's part of the wider team, and we would see them having a role in helping communities who want to prepare local place plans access funding that is available, not just for preparation, but also for then moving on to delivery of local place plans. And then also our community learning and development colleagues in terms of being able to work with communities, give them the capacity, knowledge and information that they need to progress the plan. So I think it's a bit of a combination of resources in the way of staff time. So that's really, using resources which may currently be needed across a lot of different areas. So I think it's going to be very much a case of allocating any available resources that we have to those communities where we feel they are most needed. So as part of our kind of initial engagement work, we are in contact with various community organisations, so finding out where they're at, have they a desire to prepare local place plans and then taking it forward through that route. We had put in a plea to Scottish Government that resources should be specifically identified for local place plans, but that doesn't look to be forthcoming. So limited resources and using what we have available wisely and in areas of most need.
Thank you, Brenda. I think Barbara Renton would like to come in to add to the response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parrott. Councillor Allen, then you may be aware that there is a transformation programme for the council, and one of those transformation projects is in relation to community engagement. And as part of that, then local place plans will be part of the scope, and we will be looking at the priorities in terms of our engagement with communities and our statutory requirements for that as well. So Brenda quite clearly has, outlined that there are resourcing issues. I think we've already acknowledged that, but within that review, then we're hoping that there will be this prioritisation to be able to deliver this, but also to look at a single place plan for communities and localities, subject to the findings of the review.
Thank you for those responses, and I'm sorry I've given you the question that added to the longest response. That was not the intention. I understand the pressures on budgets, and I think we're all going to have to work within that coming forward. Your points about community action plans, some of them are mature and some of them are just getting off the ground. And I don't want to see a conflict from the enthusiasm that there has been in the community action plans and how that might impact on what we're asking them to do now. I thought I'd raise the point. It's not needing an answer. Thank you.
We would not need an answer, but I'll answer it anyway because I'm like that. I absolutely agree with you. Sort of where we've got very engaged communities, we would want to continue that engagement and support that.
Thank you. We'll now move to Councillor Cuthbert, followed by Councillor Welch, and then we'll move on to second questions.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I'm being a little bit parochial as well. It is planning and it is Kinross, of course, so you'd expect that. I'm really building on what Councillor Robertson was saying about the pressure locally. It's quite clear that there is a lot of pressure on the infrastructure in Kinross. You can't get an urgent doctor's appointment in 5 days. The NHS dentistry are not taking on any new clients. Both Kinross and Milnerthorpe Primary School appear to be heading towards 100% capacity. The sewage system is causing problems with the loch. So really what I'm interested to know is when can we feed into the overall unit numbers that go into the upcoming LDP3? And I ask that because in principle, my understanding is there's approximately 250 units left to build in Kinross. So almost 88% of the units that were in LDP 1 and 2 have already been built. So there is always a temptation to say, right, there's a lack of capacity in unit numbers in Kinross because they've all been built. So we'll throw 1,000 new units into the area without considering the impact on the services. Whereas somewhere else that might have had 1,000 units allocated in their local development plan, it may only have had 100 built, so all you're adding is another 100, if you see what I mean. So really what I'm trying to get to is how do we have an input to the overall unit numbers that are going to come in the LDP3, because presumably that goes into TAY plan and all the other bits beforehand. If I can ask that question.
Thank you. Brenda?
In terms of the overall numbers for Perth and Kinross area, that has been or will be outlined in NPF 4. We then undertake a housing needs and demands assessment, which looks at the allocation and requirement for units across specific housing market areas, so Kinross being one of those. The housing needs and demands assessment is part of the evidence gathering exercise and will feed into the evidence report along with what I was referring to earlier, so our gathering of information in relation to the issues that you have raised, Councillor Cuthbert. That information will all be fed into the evidence report, and that will go to the Department of Planning and Environmental Appeals for them to review and consider whether we have appropriate evidence to be able to move forward. At that stage, we'll then look at the strategy for the allocation of development, and that will be within the the bounds of the housing needs and demands assessment and the information that comes up with in terms of the numbers for specific housing market areas. So at that stage, you'll be able to to feed into that process and the allocation of specific sites. Kind of National Planning Framework 4 is very much looking at the principle of 20-minute neighbourhoods, and that's basically people should be able to walk or use active travel within a 20-minute distance to be able to access all the facilities that they require. So that's the type of framework that we will be working within. And I would say, it got a little bit further down the line before we're looking at where do the actual, housing allocations go. But certainly, we'll be seeking input and, community input into that as well.
Councillor Cuthbert, do you want to come back on that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just trying to get a definite date and reassurance that we will have an input into it, because we have an input into the LDP, I understand that, but I'm not altogether convinced that we have an input into the numbers of units allocated to specific housing market areas. And it's that bit that I'm looking at, is how many are actually allocated to Kinross.
Brenda, can you comment further?
In terms of, the National Planning Framework 4, it's a figure for the whole area. When we have the final, or we have, in terms of developing the HNDA, there has been various discussion around that across, well, it's the wider planning area. So there has been involvement in that to date, and we're almost at the stage of getting the final report on that. So I think it'll be more in terms of the allocation of that housing need for the housing market area.
If I may, I think we've. I'm not sure whether that's something that we can have brought to this committee, but certainly I think there are things you're saying, Councillor Cuthbert, that we should take up out of the meeting, but and we'll do that. Thank you.
And I'll seek to clarify with Brenda what the normal arrangements in terms of the housing needs demand analysis, if that's the right order.
Thank you. We'll now move to Councillor Welch.
Thanks, Convener. So I guess my question is, will there be an opportunity to consider the impact on communities of, and that's both positive and negative, on short-term lets and second homes as part of the consultation for LDP3? And a supplementary question relating to tourism. Ensure that communities' concerns can be captured and addressed, and manage any negative impacts as a result of increasing tourism activity, which, yeah, again, we're broadly trying to encourage, but obviously it does throw up some local issues that need to be managed and overcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Had you been in the room, Councillor Welch, I'd have glowered at you for sneaking your second question in there, but Brenda, perhaps you can take both of those just now. Thank you.
In terms of short-term lets, that is something that we have been looking into. The licensing scheme for short-term lets was set up at the beginning of October, and we'll be looking more at developing policy around that when we have more clarity around, how many we have in the area and, what the specific issues are that, are coming forward from that. So there's still a good bit more work to be done. We have done some research, but we really need to see what comes once, people have registered and, applied for the license through that. So yeah, that's certainly an issue we'll be looking at, and may potentially have a policy in the next LDP if deemed necessary and appropriate. In terms of your question around tourism, the revised National Planning Framework 4 basically has put in or is looking to better promote sustainable tourism, kind of more under the banner of, not just climate change, but what's sustainable for the tourism industry themselves and moving forward. So once we've had time to digest a bit more of what's coming from that, we can then look to see what's appropriate to include within LDP3 in relation to helping to foster that local sustainable tourism and the impacts potentially arising, for communities.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now come back to firstly Councillor Robertson for his second question, and then Councillor Bailey McLaren, and that will be the end of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. In LDP2, the housing allocation for Kinross and Milnathorpe were reduced by 10% because of as we've heard, the serious problems around Lochleven. Now, what was the result of that? The result of that was that every housing application that came forward was actually grossly increased by and given consent by this councillor's planning authority and also the Scottish Government reporter. So that 10% reduction meant absolutely nothing. It was just it meant nothing. What's going to be in the new LDP3, or can we have confidence that what will be in the LDP3 will actually be adhered to this time and not just be a sop to people like me who have concerns about the issues around Lochleven?
Thank you. Brenda, are you able to give comfort there at all? Thank you.
In terms of the, Lochleven itself and the specific policies around that, we have made that commitment that we will work with members, SEPAs, Scottish Water, to take that forward and to, develop a policy which is as acceptable as possible for all involved in that. We appreciate the issues that are there, and I think that will be taken into consideration in terms of of the next plan. I kind of feel we're alluding to the what will the policy be in terms of specific maximum numbers on development sites. We have a capacity range currently in LDP2, and we need to consider developments as they come forward in terms of placemaking principles, what is appropriate on that site, depending on the different scheme, how a scheme comes forward. It could be something acceptable, which is 5 units over 10 units over, it's very difficult to just say that is the maximum number that you can accommodate on that site. If there are, there may be other factors which do limit the number. So perhaps infrastructure issues such as transport will not dwell too much on the drainage issues. So there are a number of factors which really mean that, if we were to go to appeal on a site, we could find ourselves in difficulty if we're saying, no, that's the maximum number that we said. If a development comes forward that's over the numbers and is deemed appropriate in terms of placemaking principles. So I don't know how much comfort I can actually offer on that, but
I'm really sorry, but the question I asked you was, there was a 10% reduction in allocation for Kinross in LDP2. And the point I'm making is that was completely ignored. And I'm wanting to know what actually will be done to safeguard these sort of, if we put this in the LDP3, how can we safeguard that in future?
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Robertson, I think Bob Warrington wants to come in to add to the reply.
Councillor Robertson, that's not the purpose of this paper. This paper is to get committee to agree what is our statutory requirement to consult. The issues that you are raising will come through that consultation process. You sort of have been here through the preparation of both LDP1 and LDP2. You're aware that our staff try their hardest to accommodate all of the, sort of the views of all of our elected members as part of that process. This is outlining how we will going to do that, but particularly in relation to how we engage our communities and what LDP3 will be like. I absolutely understand that there are concerns, sort of, and I think that, sort of we've heard very clearly about the concerns for Kinross, but there are concerns in other areas as well. And there is a real commitment, as we have done, as I said previously, in terms of the preparation of both the previous plan and the current plan, to engage you with all of that.
Thank you. And for the last question, I'll go to Bailey McLaren. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's maybe just more of a comment. Just within the consultation process, I would ask you to put my now agricultural hat back on. The agricultural communities, such as engage with the NFU, who represent a large number of land users and as well as landowners. When we talk about landowners, I would encourage you to remember within that we have land users as well. So the two organisations of Scottish Land Estates and NFU within very much part of rural communities, and it's sort of the remembering the rural community aspect of a local development plan in the consultation process. Thank you.
Brenda, can you come into that one? Thank you.
Yes, we will certainly look to do that. We have recently been in touch with the NFU along with our climate change colleagues to look to have discussions around what can we do, how can we work together to ensure that we are taking account of agriculture as we move forward with future policy development. So we have made that connection.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, and I certainly recognise the concerns that have been raised as we move forward with the development plan scheme, but I'd like to move the report. This report presents members with an update of the development plan scheme for 2022. The scheme is published annually and provides an explanation of the local development plan, a timetable of preparations for the next development plan, and the participation statement that details our commitment to community engagement. The report highlights the challenges faced in delivering LDP3 on time due to a delay in government regulations for the Planning Scotland Act 2019. I am keen to stress that the Scottish Government has recognised this barrier and have envisaged that a new style plan should be in place for every authority by 2027. As you can see from the report, PKC will meet this target. The report demonstrates the volume of work being undertaken in evidence gathering and the forward planning involved in community engagement organised for 2023. This ambitious programme is evidence of planning's role in the PKC offer and the Council's aim to become a net zero place by 2045. I am happy to move the report and will call upon the Vice Convener to second it. Thank you.
I'm happy to second, Convener.
Thank you. And we now move to comment and Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I'm pleased to see this coming forward, and I'm sure it will go through the process and we'll all take part in it. But I think it's important that we learn the lessons that should come from LDP2. And I consider that LDP2 has failed Kinross considerably, because all the protections that were put in place in LDP2 came to nothing. We've got a situation now where we've got a sewer system that's totally unfit for purpose, that allows raw sewage to be deposited into Loch Leven, and yet we still are granting consent for far more houses than ever allocated in LDP2. So I think it's about time we actually try to be a bit more forceful and make sure that what we put into our plans actually stick and we adhere to them, and not allowed to be pushed around by developers and others which has a negative effect on the communities that we all represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'm sure you will seek to make your voice properly heard throughout the engagement process. There are no other comments requested, so can we agree this paper? Agreed. Thank you. We now move on to paper 6, the Mobile Telecommunications Policy Statement, and I will ask Graham Pinfield to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. I know it's quite a long policy statement, but I'll keep my comments brief. This really updates the telecommunications policy that the Council's had since 2001. It updates it, but it also broadens it as well. There's a lot has happened over those past 20 years. The first iPhone came out in 2007, and we're now on iPhone 14. We've got 4 main mobile network operators that are all competing with each other to expand their networks, but Scotland remains the poorest country in the UK for its mobile network coverage. Both UK government and Scottish government have it as a priority to expand mobile networks where we can, and it's important for Perth and Kinross as well, for our citizens and for the delivery of services, and particularly for our rural areas, for people's quality of life. Half of the population report using their mobile phones more now since the pandemic, and the growth of smartphone use is particularly high amongst the 16 to 24-year-olds. So there's 96% of them have and use their smartphones, as I'm sure we're all familiar with. So this paper really updates on a whole range of different initiatives and encourages the Council to be proactive in working with organisations like Scottish Futures Trust, and we've got Rod McFarlane here today from Scottish Futures Trust. We're working very closely with them, and they're the infrastructure advisor to Scottish Government on telecoms networks and the expansion of those. Engaging with Scottish Futures Trust, engaging with the Scottish 5G Centre, engaging with Scottish Government and with the UK Government as well. And there's large amounts of money being put in to resolve the partial not spots and total not spots that we've got across Perth and Kinross and across the Tay Cities region. So it asks you to endorse this updated telecoms policy statement, and one of the single most important things that we can do is designate a single point of contact, because a lot of the mobile network operators get very frustrated when they approach local authorities, and other councils in Scotland have done similar things, which is to designate a single point of contact who can then liaise with the other departments across the council. So happy to answer any questions, myself and Rod McFarlane.
Thank you very much for that. And the first question is Councillor Angus Forbes.
Thanks, convener. Graham, 4.2 refers to 136 of the council's buildings which are connected last year to gigabit capable broadband speeds, and if my memory serves me correctly, one of the benefits of that was that local residents and local businesses would benefit from that connection. Can you tell us if that has happened, and if you happen to know how many businesses or residents are able to tap into that high-speed connection?
Yeah, it's a work in progress still at the moment, but we're currently discussing. We put out an expression of interest for investment to expand that network beyond those premises. So we're currently in discussions with one of the altnets called Gigalock, who are very interested in investing in the Perth area. So using the network that we've now established there. So that's a very positive thing, and that's currently happening. And the investment prospectus, as we called it, is still out there and has had interest from other outlets as well. So I can see that definitely happening over the next 12 to 18 months.
Thank you for that. Councillor Forbes, do you want to follow up just now?
Yeah, very quickly, convener, thank you. So Graham, are you really telling us in a roundabout way that at this point in time, no residents or local businesses are benefiting from that high-speed connection?
No, that's not the case, because BT have expanded their network in the more rural premises. So I think there's around about 600 or more premises that they have connected as well off the back of the local full fibre network. But we can come back to you with the precise numbers. It's sometimes difficult to tell, but that's the figure that BT gave us.
That's great. Thank you, Graham. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. And we now move to Bailey.
Thank you, convener. And if I may, I did observe on the ground, Councillor Forbes, that some of the properties by Intershire Primary School got fibre broadband at the same time as the connection went in there. So it could be that they benefited, but we'll let officers come back and give you an authoritative answer. My question was actually related, obviously, to the reports at hand today. This is all very good news, and pleased to hear we're reviewing this statement. My question is, when we approve this statement, does that immediately unlock any sites where providers will want to build and we're already knocking the door, or is this more about paving the way and providing an updated policy and that single point of contact? So I guess the question is, does our approval of this report directly unblock anything, or is it more about laying paving stones for the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. My understanding is that this facilitates but does not immediately unlock, but I'll ask Mr. Pinfield to come in. Thank you.
Yes, that's true, convener and councillor. It's really enabling, the council to have a dialogue with the mobile network operators. I believe our development management colleagues are currently dealing with about 5 applications at the moment. So what we really want, so that we can get the mass, that is the macro side of the mobile networks in the right places. And so this policy statement, I think, is just a signal to the industry that we want to work with the industry, we want to get the masts in the right place. We want as few masts as possible to get the maximum coverage. So it really doesn't unlock any of the sites. We've had a dialogue, assisted by Scottish Futures Trust with the industry for about 12, 18 months now, and we hope that this policy statement will really consolidate that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And now Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, convener. This is a very interesting, very in detailed report. I'm really quite impressed by its coverage. I have one specific question about section 4.10 as regards the 5G coverage, particularly in urban areas. I wonder if you could give me just a rough idea of, when you say urban areas, is that just going to be Perth, or is that going to be other towns within the county? Thanks.
Yeah, yes, councillor. With regards to 5G, we really have very limited 5G rollout in Scotland at the moment. It's really focused just in the main centres of Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and I believe in Dundee. So it's very small at the moment. Rod might want to comment some more. There was one application for 3 for a 5G mobile mast on Dunkeld Road, which we refused, and that's mentioned in the report, just because of the size of the mast. I believe EE has a sort of top of 4G level in the centre of Perth at the moment, which they class as 5G, but I don't think is generally accepted to be a full sort of 5G network, but they've enhanced their coverage to be the top of sort of 4G. But Rod may want to comment.
Oh, sorry. The 5G rollout in rural Scotland is yet to happen. It really does rely on the operators having sufficient 5G spectrum. Sorry, this comes down to the operators requiring 5G spectrum that they can use. It's interesting, 3 had that application in, as they have more available 5G spectrum than the other operators at this time. But I would expect in the first instance to see EE coming out with upgrades to existing infrastructure to use that. It's not across all the operators at this time.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. And we'll now go to Councillor Kugali and then Councillor Allen, and that at the moment is the end of questions unless anyone gets in very quickly. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering how the experiences of the storms earlier in the year had changed the long-term strategy. Obviously, I think there was maybe surprise is the wrong word, but as to the damage that was caused quite quickly and how hard it was to rectify. So just wondering how that's fed into the long-term strategy here.
Thank you. My understanding is that the storms impacted on mobile telecoms through batteries and charging as opposed to infrastructure. But again, Mr. Penfield, thank you.
I'll hand over to Rod, if you don't mind, convener, who's been looking at this Scotland-wide.
Yeah, the power outages were the main problem. It's pretty rare for the actual infrastructure to be damaged in itself. What I would say is that the sites that are used for emergency services, be it by the extended area services or the emergency services networks, are equipped with standby batteries and generators. However, the microwave links between these sites then relies on all the sites in the network being supported. So even with power support, you will still experience some outages, but the rollout of generators continues with the new emergency service network taking place.
Thank you. Councillor Kugali, are you happy with that? Thank you. And we'll now move on to Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. In 4.2, we talk about reaching 100% R100 programme. Have we got any idea when we can conceivably expect it to be 100%? What are the barriers? And one of the reasons for asking that question is my colleague, Councillor Forbes, has had to drive 30 miles today to get a 4G signal to join this meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Allen, I'm not going to take that question because it relates specifically to the R100 project, which is actually not part of the paper today, which is about our mobile telecoms policy statement. There will be opportunity for you to ask that in other places at other times. Thank you. Councillor Welch.
I hope this doesn't sort of confuse things further following your clarification there, convener, but it's really just to point out that it's great to see us coming forward with plans and a mechanism to engage with operators through this new policy, but particularly around 5G. But in my own instance, in a number of communities in Strathmore, we still don't even have 3G accessible, which, for example, impacts on things like availability or functionality of smart meters. So again, it's really just to recognise that while this is great laying, a roadmap, actually there's still quite a lot of communities being left behind at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Pinfield. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just make a quick comment on that because Rod, I'm sure will want to comment as well. This is where we identify partial not spots and total not spots. So the government, UK government and the industry are partners in a £1 billion investment at the moment. So a lot of those applications that we have in at the moment are to deal with the partial not spots, and then we'll be dealing with the total not spots as well. Partial not spots are where we only have one mobile network operator network in the area, and total not spots are where we don't have any. So it's a matter of prioritising the areas. It will be coming the next 18 months, which is one of the reasons for bringing this policy statement now. We'll see a lot of activity over the next 12 to 18 months where this money is being spent to improve the networks in that area and recognise the difficulties that you've got. But Rod might want to comment.
Yeah, SFT and Scottish Government are sitting on a Scottish working party with the SRN programme, but the Home Office, DMSL and DCMS are involved. Currently, there are surveyors on the ground looking for suitable locations to solve both partial and total not spots. Just very briefly, the partial not spots, whilst part funded by UK Government, are being delivered by the mobile operators. The total not spots are being done by DMSL. So we are very much involved in that for Scotland to ensure that we get the right coverage in the right places.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you, and we'll take Councillor Duff now as the last question. Thank you.
I think it's possibly more a request than a question, but I know that my first dealing with a telephone mast came just in the last session there, and it was the first time I'd come across a planning application called a prior notification, which was different from the normal planning applications we dealt with. It was to do with a mobile transmitter mast getting put up in the local area, and it may be that many of the members are not aware of what a prior notification is and what it allows telecommunications companies to do in terms of masts. So it might be useful just to prepare some kind of small brief in relation to that. I think the report talks about 2730 masts potentially going up in relation to the 5G network across Perth and Kinross. So there's more chance, I think, of members coming across prior notification applications, and just maybe a better understanding of what it means would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. I think Mr. Pinfield can take that one on. Thank you.
Yes, happy to produce that note. I mean, part of having the single point of contact is we've been working very closely with development management colleagues and with the industry as well, who are represented by intermediaries. So we've been working particularly with O2 and Vodafone through an organisation called Cornerstone, and we're very keen to get early sight of areas and sites that they're thinking of the prior notification, so we can work constructively with them on access to those sites and the design of the masts in those sites. But happy to do the note. Yeah.
Thank you, and we'll move on. But before we move on, Barbara Renton has indicated that in view of the interest there is in this topic and wider matters, she's committed to prepare a briefing note that covers this in detail and the wider question of R100, for which I thank her. I'll now move the report.
Happy to second, Convener.
Hang on a bit, Vice Convener, that's a bit keen.
And it caught me unawares there, that's why. Hurry up, keep up.
The report provides an outline of a new telecommunications policy statement for the Council, which officers have been working on with Scottish Futures Trust for the past 18 months or so. I take this opportunity to thank our officers and the Scottish Futures Trust for their work. The policy statement aims to update a 20-year-old policy that the Council has on telecommunications equipment that was concerned to restrict the deployment of equipment on land and Council premises due to health concerns at that time. The report and policy statement really brings the Council up to date with the many different initiatives that are happening in mobile telecom networks.
the statement continues to be mindful of unintended locational consequences for residents, landscape and public health, but also asks the Council to be proactive in working with mobile network operators by using the tools, template leases and payment guidance that is provided by SFT Infralink project, engaging with the Shared Rural Network Initiative that is seeking to address the partial and total not spots, updating its LDP policies at the next review, and allocating a single point of contact for the Council to work with mobile network operators and the agencies to improve mobile networks in our area. I am pleased to move the paper for your approval and would now call on Bailey Williamson to second the report. Thank you.
Yeah, go on then. Okay, yeah, I'm happy to second.
Thank you. And we now have requests for comments, and the first I'll take is Councillor Kugali.
I'm going to start with something I didn't think I'd ever be actually doing in here, and quoting in support of the SNP London branch, who made a fantastic point at SNP conference in October that connectivity in Scotland is essentially pretty pitiful. Of course, they did stop just short of admitting that that is in large part due to the abject failure of the R100 scheme. But it is important to note that we can play a really, really big role here as a council in repairing some of the damage caused by yet another stone on the mountain of undelivered Scottish Government promises as we look to support the expansion of mobile connectivity across Perth and Kinross. I sincerely hope that the administration are playing a really bullish role in communicating to their SNP colleagues in Holyrood that their continued failure of rural households and their connectivity is simply not acceptable.
Thank you very much for your comment, Councillor Kugali. I'm impressing on my party colleagues the need for demolishing our mountains, which stand in the way of so much connectivity, but we'll see how far I get with that. Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I have to confess I was disappointed you wouldn't take the question from my colleague on the R100 scheme, because it is mentioned in the report, and convention in the past has been that anything that's referenced in the report is taken. I stopped short at a point of order to try and encourage you, but there we are, so I'll reference it in comments, because what he said is absolutely true. I was intending to join this meeting remotely from a holiday cottage that we've rented on the Moray coast, but because the Wi-Fi is so limited, it's nothing better than dial-up speeds. I've driven 30 miles along the coast to the first car park I could find where I could get a 4G signal. So it appears to me that this more flexible approach to allow more development of mobile technology across Perth and Kinross is indeed filling in the gaps that we can't deal with through the failure of the R100 scheme. So I'm delighted to see this, and can I just thank Graham Pinfield for his excellent and informative and, as always, very thorough details in the report that he's given us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. My apologies if I was too sharp with one of your colleagues in trying to stick strictly to the subject, and I'll reflect on it. But it was when he mentioned in his question wider Scotland that my alarm bells rang. Thank you. Bailey, your comment. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. I welcome this report. It's good to see this coming back. Obviously, 20 years is a real lifetime in the terms of mobile telephony. It was very embryonic in the early 2000s. Obviously, very, very different now, and there's a different opinion from the public about masts, etc., and the desire for coverage. The thing I wanted to really add to the debate is that we should really keep in mind that more and more people these days, especially in rural areas, are relying on 4G and 5G and to some extent 3G as their primary broadband connection to their home. There are more and more price plans now that allow unlimited data access, and so we should keep in mind that supporting better mobile telephony coverage actually improves the access of people to home broadband as well in the places where R100 isn't reaching. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Councillor Duff.
Thank you, convener. Just bring the notes up. I welcome this policy statement update and the future plans for 5G across Perth and Kinross. The provision of better and wider mobile digital communications is extremely important for our communities, especially our business communities, and in particular those in the remoter rural areas such as my ward in Highland Perthshire. I very much welcome the details of the financial investment of both the UK and the Scottish Governments in providing 5G and subsequently 6G coverage in Perth and Kinross. providing speeds of more than 1 gigabit per second. 5G, I think, is at least 20 times faster than 4G. And these developments will see a considerable improvement, not just in internet speeds, but also in the development potential for the expansion of technology in many areas. The UK government estimates that every £1 invested could return up to £15 and be worth an additional 5.7 billion to the UK economy. Storm Arwen was mentioned, and I think it showed us how reliant we've become on digital technology. And I think there is a need to ensure that we have better and more resilient digital communications networks. And I'd certainly like to see mobile telecommunication masts having better battery backup facilities than they appear to have had during the storm. To a certain extent, although we haven't mentioned it, the proposed removal of the copper wire landline system may be a retrograde step until such times as a reliable mobile system is in place. And if I can continue with the old school comment, I'd also hope that Perth and Kinross Council will maintain its support for communities in relation to the retention of existing phone boxes in rural areas where there continues to be a lack of a mobile network. I think has been recognised, many of our rural areas have suffered badly with broadband and mobile telecoms coverage. The R100 programme is several years late and still has far too many properties, mainly in rural areas such as mine, unable to access a decent broadband speed. And it doesn't look like this will be rectified anytime soon. This is having a significant impact on rural businesses who are having to rely on expensive, inadequate alternatives for an internet connection. Perth and Kinross will be a major beneficiary of the UK Government's Shared Rural Network project, and it may well be that this project provides 5G coverage will actually be a quicker and less expensive route to a decent internet and mobile phone service in many rural and remote areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff, for your comment. I certainly concur that the experience of the storms proved the continuing utility of the landline network, and we should get rid of it very cautiously. We shouldn't get rid of it until we are absolutely certain of the alternatives. We now move to the. Sorry, we don't. There being no more comment, can we approve the paper? Thank you very much.
Okay.
We now move to the private paper, but I was going to say my watch says it's 17 minutes past 3. If we take an 8-minute break until 25 minutes past and everyone comes back logged in, tuned in to the private paper on our technology. Thank you.